on taxi drivers. This isn't a subject I would have picked up 10 years ago, but now I can see that one thing that has enriched my later life, my retirement life, is the encounter with taxi drivers. I suppose it's the result of two things. One is that I take taxis a little more often than I did. I'm elderly, and if I've been to a dinner with drinks in the college, I come back in a taxi. And even we take the luxury, if we're going on a long distance flight, taking a taxi to the airport, which relieves the strain, getting lost in the traffic and so on. And so we go, or if I go to Oxford or something, I sometimes take a taxi. We can afford to do so. We're reasonably well off, and we don't travel very much. So it feels like a luxury, because certainly when I was a child, taking a taxi at all, I've got notes in my letters and so on, we took a taxi to somewhere, and that was a great event for our family because we could hardly afford it. Now taxis are part of everyone's life, more or less. And so that's one thing. I get into taxis. The second is the amazing development of multiculturalism, cultural groups in this country, because almost all the taxi drivers we have, particularly on long distance journeys, are not born in the UK and have come here in the last 20 or less years, and they are from all over the world. There are East Europeans, there are people from India, Pakistan, the Middle East. Haven't had a Japanese or a Chinese taxi driver yet, but they are from very many places, and usually they're very open to conversation, particularly on an hour or two journey. And Sarah, my wife, is very good at engaging them, and so we do kind of mini anthropological interviews with people from very different backgrounds. As soon as you start asking about their family and their children and their experiences of their childhood in wherever they came from, they open up. I don't know how many people do that with them, but certainly they seem to enjoy telling you. And so you suddenly get an insight which would be very difficult to get normally into Afghanistan or Iraq or Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or wherever it was. And so it's a kind of anthropology. I don't record it and I don't note it down, but my inside knowledge, because many of them, until COVID anyway, used to go back frequently, and they're just beginning to go back again. So they had the latest news. They would go back to their extended family and wherever it was and hear about the local politics and cultural and social changes that had occurred. And so we got news from the front. It was rather similar to the BBC programme From Our Own Correspondent, where you hear about people in different parts of the world. And so taxi drivers are, in a way, from our own correspondent in wherever it is. And they're usually extremely charming, and their English is very good. And another thing that strikes us about them, as it does about talking to people who are now coming in larger quantities to our village, is how easily and well they've adapted. We hear about how their children are getting on well in school and how they usually enjoy living in this country and would like to continue to do so. I don't think we've ever heard of any harassment or unpleasantness, either from people in their taxis or more generally. So taxi drivers are a strange interstitial kind of group, and many of them have done other jobs before, quite high-skilled professional jobs, and then decided they wanted to be taxi drivers, which perhaps gives them variety, certainly freedom over arranging their lives, and usually, just to cap it all off, the pleasure of going in these taxis is that they are often extremely comfortable, air-conditioned, and very clean. So taxi driving, one could write many a nice book based on these conversations, but time is too short, I'm afraid.